a happy boy. I'm on leave until the new year, so I can relax, chill, enjoy football. There is a wedding that I need to go to, but it's going to be a lot of relaxation for me. So I'm happy. What about you, Ois?
Yeah, very well, thank you. It's been nearly a week now. Here back in the UK, it hasn't stopped raining. It's been a bit miserable weather-wise. Not complaining, not complaining. But yeah, seeing a lot of friends and family. Seeing a few more friends tonight. Football was good over the weekend, so yeah, doing well. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Right, talking about football. Cracking game yesterday. Really was enjoyable. It was for the neutral. It must have been a fantastic game. If you're a Spurs fan, you must have been tearing your hair out. If you're a Liverpool fan, you would have been delighted, but a little bit disappointed, conceding two goals with a little bit of complacency, which is what I thought. But in terms of the game, cracking advertisement for the Premier League. And are we looking at the Premier League champions? So, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we are. I really do think we are. It felt as though this game was a defining performance, wasn't it, Ayub, with regards to the Premier League title race. Liverpool had the fillip just before the game with Chelsea drawing at a blustery Goodison Park. Always was going to be a tough game played in tough conditions. Chelsea will probably want to have that game back, but by all intents and purposes, it seems to have been a fair result in the end between the two teams. Everton fighting hard back to back, good results for them. But for Liverpool, it felt as though this was an opportunity for them to put some distance between them and Chelsea. They already have an advantage in the Premier League title race. But I think beyond just numbers, Ayub, and the points itself, it was just the air of dominance and inevitability, I would say, about the victory at Spurs that perhaps rang the loudest, if you ask me, in terms of where this Premier League title race sits or is situated right now. Liverpool are the best team in the Premier League. They have the best forward line. I perhaps did them a disservice by suggesting Chelsea were a tick better than them in terms of just out and out offensive output. I think I might have been a bit hasty in that. Liverpool, in terms of their rotations, their movements, the way they unsettled a makeshift backline. Let's be fair. I mean, that's difficult. We'll briefly mention Archie Gray, a player that you know very well. Very difficult. I mean, for him at his tender age to go up against that type of backline, you'd hope that experience serves him well in the future. I mean, there's a player there, you can tell he's got something about him, but it's an ask. It's a tough ask for him at that age. His centre back partner didn't really do him any favors. Jet Spence, I thought overall did well, but even a game where he probably acquitted himself fairly well against the best player in the league right now. Even then, Salah still puts his imprint all over that game. So, yeah, I think Liverpool, firstly, dominance, the arrogance with which they play. They've got match winners everywhere, contributions everywhere. I mentioned before the way they embrace risk and chaos is like no other team. I would say there was less chaos on show yesterday, perhaps to your point in the introduction. There were goals conceded yesterday, which Arne Slot spoke about that he wasn't too pleased with. But I thought the goals were conceded in a way that was simply just down to not necessarily just complacency, but this air of we're just going to be better than you today and we're going to score more goals than you. It was nothing. The game never felt really in the balance, even when Maddison scored. We'll come onto the Spurs side of the ledger shortly. But from a Liverpool perspective, their rotations, their way of playing, you saw again for the second goal the way Gomez threads that ball vertically through the middle. He did that against Fulham as well. This is clearly a clear, defined way of playing for them. I mean, that first goal in terms of Arnold. I mean, that's that as good as that is. That's bread and butter for him. That's how good a player that he is. And the wonderful thing about Trent Alexander-Arnold, I don't know if you agree, is the fact that he's now popping up in midfield. He's got a little bit of a free role. Is that he often does find himself then in that kind of uh, 45-degree position, not just fully out on the right, but just in that inside position where he's got all of that kind of 18-yard box to deliver balls into. And now you've seen consistently Salah's cross last week against Fulham for the Gakpo header at the far post. You saw yesterday, Arnold's cross for the Diaz header. These players are now knowing clearly that these players can put it where we need them to put it, and hence they're anticipating the runs, they're anticipating where the ball's going to go. It makes it look a little easier than perhaps what it is, but clearly right now there's a sense of hey, these players are capable of putting it right on the sixpence. And Liverpool are getting goals off the back of it. They're scoring goals every which way. You, how many goals did they score yesterday in terms of just from that, from 9 yards and in? That tells you that they're cutting through teams. They also missed quite a few probably decent opportunities. Probably should have scored nine, maybe even 10 yesterday. But I just think it was a game where they oozed class. I text my brothers at halftime that was just classy performance, one word. Uh, but just incredible to watch the way they play. Again, a real sense of arrogance with which they're approaching the games right now. They feel confident at the back. Lots of lovely rotations and movements, always with an intent to score. That's the key thing. And right now, they've got players at the absolute peak of their powers. So kind of opining whether or not Diaz is getting to that money level of contributions. I think he's still a little shy, but he's well on his way. And Salah's obviously just perfected in terms of his game and his craft. So overall, I do think we're looking at the Premier League champions. I do. I think they're the most complete team. People often talk about, hey, what's going to happen when they hit that run? It's difficult. I mean, I always wonder where's you say that as though there's a sense of inevitability about it, but I would argue if you can keep your players healthy, Salah has always been healthy for Liverpool. If you look at, I mean, I think he had a little stint last year, but for the most part, he's always playing 30 plus games. I had a quick look just this afternoon. If you can keep your best players fit, which for the most part they have, there's no reason why they can't continue this form. They don't look like they're about to go anywhere. Last year, there was always a sense of vulnerability because defensively they looked very shaky. They were conceding in most games. Right now, they look clearly like the best team in the league, the most assured team in the league, the team with the most answers. And I think the number one thing they have right now, Ayub, and I'll finish off this on the first answer, is that they play with a sense of real conviction and no anxiety in terms of the fact that they feel they will always score. They will always create and they will always score. Often you see teams where you think they're not quite committing men forward. They're not quite sure. They're passing for the sake of passing. You're not quite sure how they're going to break certain teams down. Liverpool play in a way where they know we will break you down, and that's leading to a lot of opportunities. Players making extra runs because they know they'll get on the end of it. I mean, so many opportunities yesterday, right from the very off for the first few minutes. So, wonderful performance for me, a defining performance, a marker in the season, and I do think now that this team, especially given that what little hope perhaps Arsenal had has been snuffed out with the news that Saka's torn his hamstring. I think that's the end of that. I do think Chelsea were always going to be a tad short. Maybe that was evident yesterday in terms of a tough away game that they had to navigate. But yeah, Liverpool, best team in the league, uh, best squad in the league, I would argue as well in terms of key position, especially in that midfield. Or at least squad in the sense of you don't need 26, 30 players. You need a quality 17, 18 players. And I think they have that, especially with the options off the bench. So, yeah, for me, they will go on to win the Premier League title. And I think at this juncture, well deserved as well, at least around the halfway mark, that they are setting standards that the others can't keep up with.
Well, you're saying they're going to win the league. Spoke to two or three Liverpool fans, and they're reluctant to accept just yet. But I think that's playing it safe. I think they don't want to stick their neck out. They don't want to jinx it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I think it's well summarised. They're a team. I mean, there's a phrase that's used in sport, being in the zone, and I think it's not often used for football teams, but I think they are in the zone because they are just playing with supreme confidence. Virtually every single player is at the top of their game. I think they're going out with the expectation they're going to win the game, and they're going to absolutely roll over the opposition. I think it's not just a case of winning the game. They're going to absolutely batter the opposition. Now, Spurs, I mean, they've been indifferent this season. We had Moggy on, and he obviously he's sort of quite reflective of what Spurs fans are thinking at the moment. They are sort of quite concerned. It's a little bit erratic. So it's probably not the sternest test Liverpool will have. But to score 6 goals, and probably you're right, they could have scored 10 goals. And it wouldn't have been an unfair reflection on the performance for Liverpool if they had scored 10 goals. But it just is. It's wonderful to watch. I mean, I think if you've got an affinity to Liverpool, and I do like Liverpool, it's beautiful to watch. I think it's the way that football should be played. But what I want to ask you is has Slot made a difference? I mean, at the moment, I mean, I think he has. I think there is a little bit more measured play. I still think it's the identity is still there. I think the remnants of Klopp are still there, but I think it just seems a little bit more methodical. I think it's not. I mean, you use the word chaos quite often about Liverpool. I think it's chaos, but it seems to be controlled chaos with with Slots at this moment in time. So what do you think? I mean, what do you think Slots brought in, or do you just think it's a continuation? This is Klopp's team that Slot has just picked up.
Yeah, it's a good point. Look, I think the number one thing he's bought a couple of things that I can see from my vantage point. One is he's secure in his skin. That's very important. What I mean by that is, even yesterday in his post-match game interview with Sky Sports after the game, Ayub, he could have hopped on if he wasn't as charismatic as he is about the weak points in the performance in terms of the loss of concentration, conceding some goals, conceding three goals when in a game that they dominated for the most part. He could have harped on about it, but he mentions it in measured tones in terms of he doesn't go on about it too much because he understands equally that the players put on a great performance. So I think he's brought a great deal of calmness, I would say, to the team. Perhaps last year when there was a lot happening. If you remember, one of my biggest observations last year when it came to Liverpool was my surprise that when they hit the summit at the 30 game mark or whenever it was, I mean they were leading for a little while, that they didn't then kind of pivot to defending a little bit more kind of in numbers just for that last 7, 8 games when they weren't keeping any clean sheets. I expected a little bit of a shift away where to say, look, we're always going to score goals. We're about a few games away. We just need to keep a couple of clean sheets here and we can win this Premier League title. Yet they kept playing the exact same way. And then some of those vulnerabilities came to haunt them. The fact that they just could not keep any clean sheets. It feels like with Slot, you're right. There are some games where they are a little bit chaotic. They try and overwhelm teams, but I think he's just brought a certain sense of calmness, a refinement to their game, a lot more coordination in terms of the patterns that they put together. There's some smart plays he's done in terms of playing Diaz up front, which is something that his predecessor hadn't really enacted. And there was a great point I thought Jamie Redknapp made post game, which I pondered on, where he spoke about how Klopp, for all of his greatness, and he it was a true great. This is not a criticism in any way, shape, or form, more just a simple observation. He asked a lot of his midfielders in terms of, uh, you know, chasing around, running around, doing Salah's running for him. If you think about the Hendersons, the Wijnaldums, the Fabinhos, a lot of their input was they're not great players in isolation, but for Liverpool it worked because they did a lot of the running for Mane, for Salah, for Firmino. I mean, Firmino was a great defender to be fair as well, even from the front. But the team was set up where marauding fullbacks, but the midfielder guys will cover. And when they were at the peak of their powers from an athleticism and an age perspective, they could do it. We saw that, and they had great success. What now he's done is he's just refined it where he's got the calmness of McAllister, he's got the athleticism of a Gravenberg, and he's using some other players in terms of key positions. Whether it's Curtis Jones now, obviously they've got Harvey Elliott, but he's able to kind of just pick and choose who he plays there and get the best out of them. So I think there's I just think him being quite secure in his managerial style, he understands I'm following a legend. There's not a whole lot wrong. There just needs to be a little bit of a refinement in terms of the way they play. So I think it's just more that more than anything else that he's not trying to reinvent the wheel, just try to add a little bit of value. And understanding, like I said, I still think he had a great squad. I mean, he had arguably the best centre back in the league and arguably the best winger in the league. So it's not as if he didn't have a base to start with and arguably the best goalkeeper in the league. So you've got all of that plus a Trent Alexander-Arnold plus other contributors. He's got an amazing amount out from Gravenberg. Again, it goes to show how good a manager he is that he's able to use Gravenberg where he's become indispensable to this Liverpool team. So for me, yes, a top manager hits all the right notes in press conferences, in interviews, speaks well, measured, never too high, never too low. He's not had too many low moments. Bless him. Jamie Carragher spoke yesterday about how after the Ipswich Town game, the very first game, there was no fist bumps. He's just very calm. He understands the larger picture here. I also think he understands the opportunity before him. He understands that this Premier League title is there for the taking. I do think he'll have his eye on the Champions League. And I keep mentioning it because I just think it's such a great opportunity for them. They are a top team. And I do think they are arguably the best team in Europe. So let's see. I think incredible coaching goes to show you that it doesn't always have to be a rebuild, doesn't always have to be kind of a step back to go two steps forward or anything like that. If you've got the right man in town, you've got the right infrastructure and the right support, you can go about having a great deal of success. And he's primed them and put them in great position for huge success this season, and he deserves immense credit for that.
Absolutely, I think he's been fantastic, and if, I think you're right because there is this danger of a new coach where he wants to put his stamp, his imprint on the club, on the squad, on the playing style. But he's realised he had a good product already. He had a good team. They played decent football. They've sort of tailed away towards the end of last season, but on the whole, they're a very good side, as you said. And he's been smart enough to just say, well, it probably just needs a small tinkering. And I think he's done a great job. I think probably also what's happened is Klopp was there for what, 6 years, 7 years, quite a long time. And albeit he'd been very successful, but I think it's just a fresh voice, a fresh face. And it seems to have perked the players up. Not to say that obviously they were tired of Klopp, but I think
Yeah.
it's reinvigorated them, and it sort of shows. And it's just been perfect. I think he's a wonderful example of what you do when you've already got a good team. I think sometimes there is that danger where you sort of feel that, right, I'm a new man. I need to sort of change things, show people that there's a different style. Sometimes you don't. If you've got good players, good team, a good setup, just continue with it. Maybe just tweak it a little bit, which is exactly what he's done. Fantastic. And we are looking at. I think that there is that question mark if there is maybe two or three players who got injured, but I think there is enough there. Uh, Obviously, what you don't want if you're a Liverpool supporter is Salah, Van Dijk. These key cogs in a well-oiled machine because maybe they just would have slightly a bigger impact on the way that things are going. But at the moment, I think things are working wonderfully well. There's a nice little cushion as well. So they're in a position where they could afford to drop the odd point here and there. But obviously, that's not what they're going to be doing. Right, that's the club on the up. Spurs and Ange. It looks. I won't sort of say it looks bleak for Ange at the moment, but there are grumblings certainly. He himself has occasionally got a little bit prickly as well. So what's your? I mean, we've obviously talked already about sort of Ange and Spurs, but do you think that Spurs fans and Spurs and David Levy will continue if results keep going against Ange? Because as you sort of put at the start, he's got one way of playing, and he's not for changing. And if they get a few more of these batterings, certainly those grumblings will get a lot louder.
Yeah, look, I think if you want me to answer it in a very clear way, it's going to end with Ange Postecoglou losing his job, rightly or wrongly. Because normally what will happen is when a team's underperforming, and when I mean underperforming, I mean in the sense of in terms of expectations from the fans, Daniel Levy will tend to part ways with his manager. Simple as, again, rightly or wrongly, you can discuss the merits of it afterwards. You know, I'm a big fan of Ange. I like him. He speaks well. His values are good. Honestly, he speaks even just on a very human level. He resonates with me. He spoke the other week about Gary O'Neill and Russell Martin, about how, no doubt they've probably given every last hour in terms of trying to turn their club's fortunes. And he just speaks well about other people, about society, about generally and what have you. But as I'm sure you're about to remind me, he's there and paid to do a job, which is to get results in the Premier League, sentiment aside. The issue that I have with Ange Postecoglou right now is that he takes serious umbrage with the line of questioning that's been posed to him time and time again about how whether or not he's ever going to relent on this out and out commitment to entertain. He's spoken about it before. I think a couple of press conferences ago, I watched the whole press conference about him. He said, look, if you want to watch some nil-nils, there's plenty of other games that you can watch actually, but that's not us. We want to entertain. The challenge I have is he doesn't offer any nuance that I see when it comes to accepting that it's not a case of either or. Liverpool are a very entertaining team to watch, arguably the most entertaining team to watch. They're also the most successful team right now in the Premier League as well. So you can be entertaining and you can also win games of football. That evidence was put forth to him right before his very eyes yesterday. So my issue with Ange Postecoglou is instead of answering it to the point where, look, we just need to do better, we need to defend better, we need the whole team to take responsibility in terms of the overall defending, he seems to double down even more to suggest this is how we play. And I thought yesterday there were some absolutely criminal things that were happening out there on the pitch. Now, if I'm a manager, and I'm not, but if I'm a manager and I've got young Archie Gray, 18-year-old, I think he could go a long way in this league for sure. You obviously can speak to it better than I can, Ayub. But you've got him as centre back. You've got Jed Spence, who's still a young fledgling fullback in this league at this level. The way I'm approaching it is, look, guys, today I need Bissouma, I need Saw, I don't need you attacking. I just need you protecting. And I'm telling my wingers, I'm telling Madison, and I'm telling all of them, is today we're going to sit in, we're going to dig in, and we're going to suffer for a result because the team that we're playing is better than us, and that's okay. That's fine. There's nothing to say. There's no need to be, oh, we don't need to worry about the opposition. We do what we do. Yeah, it's okay to look at the opposition, say this is the best team in the league right now. This is a team that's lost only once, hasn't lost away from home all season. We're going to suffer for a result. I want to see bodies on the line. I want to see doubling up your fullbacks. I want to see protection. We don't need to harry. I know we're at home and I know the crowd might get on our backs, but today we're going to suffer. We've got a young centre back who's playing his first few games for the club still. We're going to protect him. We can't just expose him to Salah, Diaz, and Gakpo and Szoboszlai running off him. Yet Ange's approach was, I mean, if you didn't know about it, you'd think he's just playing any other team. I mean, he was playing the best team in the league, Ayub. At multiple times when I watched Spurs, even in that game against Man United, and I said after that game, you asked me, I said, when you play like both clubs did, Spurs and United, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. And if that's just not a measure of success in terms of what you want long term. And so many times I watch Spurs, and I must be so frustrating for their fans. They're often defending with either four players or just those six with Saar and Bissouma trying to track back and run back. And I always think to myself, where are those banks of four where you look at it on the pitch and you freeze frame it and you say, yep, that's a good shape. Spurs are never in a good shape, are you? Never ever in a good shape. It's as though they reverse to defending as a block, defending as a unit. And people have become a little bit preoccupied, in my humble opinion, Ayub, with this whole high pressing. High pressing works when you do it as a team and you coordinate. And even then, Ayub, I would go as far as to say I would have dropped it for yesterday because of the personnel involved. I don't want Archie Gray going one on one against Diaz being exposed. Just because it's not that he's not ready for it. It's just there's in-game intelligence that you have to use. Guys, we're going to do it through protection, through numbers today. We're just going to make it difficult for Liverpool. And we've got, again, the threat on the counter to hit them from time to time. So the fact that there's very little in-game, let's say, know-how and approach, and just that we'll play our way and then we'll see where it takes us. For me, that's a really, really big and sad indictment on Ange's approach. I don't think there's anything wrong with respecting the opposition and saying today we're just going to have to suffer for a result. And the last thing I would say is there's a great article written, I think, in The Guardian by Jonathan Liu. I would advise and encourage anyone to read it. He talks about how, and it's superbly written, he talks about how ultimately Spurs are a very unserious team. And Liverpool just came in as a very serious team and took the points off a beautifully written article. And that's what I thought. I thought Spurs are just not that serious. They're not serious about football, top to bottom. You can't have a manager digging his heels in. This only goes one way. You know this. More slappings will come. They'll have some great moments. They've beaten both Manchester clubs 7-0 so far at their respective grounds. So that's away from home. But Spurs don't pass that eye test for me because they look like a team that's going to concede and concede plenty. That's four conceded to Chelsea, six conceded to Liverpool at their home ground. I just don't see enough about them where you think, yeah, they're digging in today. They're going to dig in. They're going to try and keep a clean sheet today. That's what I see. That's what I want to see from Spurs. And their unwillingness to compromise what seems to be for them beneath them in terms of that way of defending is something that if Ange Postecoglou continues to do and continues to commit to, will result in him losing his job.
I mean, I have no issue. I mean, well said, well put. I mean, I have no issue with entertainment. I think there should be. I think on the whole, it is an entertainment business, but ultimately it's sport. Sport is about winning. I think your first and foremost objective should be to win, and then you consider, right, how do I want to win the game? But it shouldn't be right. I want to entertain and then win because it sometimes happens, but it's then hit and miss. I mean, if he's solely interested in entertainment, join a circus. That's what I would say to Ange because it just you cannot just have one way of playing because I mean it was a criticism of Bielsa that we had. I mean, when it works, it's fantastic, but the higher the standard, the harder it then becomes just to have that. Oh, especially if you haven't got the caliber of players to uh, uh, implement that style of play. And I think that's the problem. He just hasn't got the caliber of player. Uh, and I would be so frustrated. And I think it's a dereliction of duty as a coach to just say, well, that's the way that I play. Unacceptable. You cannot just say that's the way I play. No, sport is about competing. You can't just throw in the towel, which is what he's done. I think the way that he plays against very good sides is virtually throwing in the towel. That's not challenging. That's not sport. That to me is not gladiator. I can't even say the word.
Gladiatorial.
That's the word. It has to be more than what he's offering at this moment in time. Now, it goes back to what I think I said last time that Daniel Levy must have known what type of coach he is. So therefore, if he's employed him, the conversation must have taken place that right, okay, is this the only way that you're going to play? So if he's taken him based on the fact that he knows what type of coach he is, then really I think Levy's got to be accountable because you can't employ a coach knowing full well what his philosophy is and then sort of throw him under the bus. So I'm a little confused at this moment in time because who do you blame? Do you blame Levy? Do you blame Ange? I mean, I will criticize Ange because I think I've never ever gravitated towards coaches who have one style of play. You've got to be adaptable, and I think if he and you've talked about it, if he carries on this way, he's not going to last much longer.
He's not going to last much longer, you, because ultimately the fans will speak. No, the fans will vote with their feet, with their voices, whatever it may be. Ultimately, I mean, you saw the Spurs fans yesterday in the stadium. You could see a sense of frustration, disillusionment. I think there's something. There's the number one way you're going to lose the fans, in my humble opinion, is when a manager talks relative nonsense. And that's the trio, that's the road that Ange is slowly going on, if you ask me. You can win games, you can lose games, but I think your words and your press conferences and your interviews after you lose or when you're going through a tough front become twice as important. Not many people remember or think about what Slot's saying in some of these press conferences ultimately because they're winning because like it's
Mm.
not really that important. But when you're losing, the first thing often fans are like, I want to hear what the manager says this evening. I swear, if he says that we played well today, I'm going to have him. Like, that's the kind of
Yeah.
sentiment. You want him to sometimes just be like, not good enough, not good. And you're like, yeah, at least he's not selling me a pack of lies. And the issue you have with Angie is he talks about it often as though he'll make you think he's seen a completely different game to you. And he's just got to be very careful. I think he's very honest, but I also think he's very stubborn. And I think he needs to find nuance in the way he's approaching some of these games. And look, yesterday he looked a beaten man after the game. He said, look, I don't really think there was much else we could do. They were just too good for us. And I think that's the case. But I go back to that game at the Etihad, Ayub, and I hate to just always compare to Arsenal, but just I think the example fits here. When Arsenal were down to 10 men, what did Arteta do? He said, you know what? There is
Mm.
no way we're going to survive this if we play 4-4-1 and play someone up front. He said, you know what? We're just going to play a 5-4 formation or a 6-3, whatever you want to call
Mm.
it. We're not going to attack. So I think Arsenal had probably 7% possession, 10% possession in that second half against Steer. But I was so proud of their efforts
Mm.
because they thought to themselves, they navigated, they took ownership to say, it's going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult, actually. We're literally just going to defend the entire half, so 50 odd minutes, on the edge of our boxes. And to a man, they did an amazing job.
Mm.
So even though they conceded at the end, you're like, you know what, that's a shift that they put in,
Yeah.
conceding. And there's a commitment to try and get a result. And they came very, very, very close. They
Mm.
suffered for a result which they were nearly rewarded with. And ultimately, they still got a point out of it. It's not so much how they play, it's the commitment to understand the game, where it is right now, how do we need to play, the ownership that, okay, crap happens, where are we now? This is how it's going to have to be. When you've got drag us in and you're missing your first two centre backs, first two choice centre backs in terms of Romero and Van der Ven, and you know there's a huge drop off in quality and experience. Again, Archie Gray doesn't deserve any criticism whatsoever. The young lad needs protecting. I mean, he needs protecting big time. You can't really blame him. It's always all good experience. If you're good enough, you're old enough, and all that nonsense. Still, you tell your centre midfielders, don't go anywhere today, lads. Just sit there. Keep it simple. If it needs to go long, just hoof it long. But you tell your wingers as well, sit in, dig in, frustrate Liverpool. Liverpool will always score, so frustrate them. Make them go sideways, make them go backwards. To make it easy for Liverpool reminded me of the old Arsenal where it was like, yeah, soft touch. Everyone knew Arsenal decent for a goal, but soft touch. You can get at them. And Liverpool yesterday just came on and quickly realised, yep, we're going to win this game. We're going to win it at Canter because we're getting spaces everywhere. And if there's one team you can't afford to give spaces to,
Mhm.
it's this vibrant and coherent Liverpool team. So for me, it was a really bad indictment on the way Ange approached the game. They were always going to lose. I think personnel wise, they were always going to lose. But there's manners in which you can lose that I think fans will accept. And I think his approach to say we're going to go toe to toe, I'm not sure how much that's done for the players' confidence. Heung-min Son couldn't even get his words out in the post-match interview to Sky Sports. I think he's a manager now under pressure, Ayub. I really do. I wish it wasn't the case, but I do think a lot of Spurs fans are losing patience with more of his approach more than anything else. And I think he needs to show that they're going to dig their way through some results, and I think he can get the Spurs fans back on side. But knowing him and how he's been talking in the press conferences, Ayub, I wouldn't hold my breath.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's too stubborn, and if he maintains his stubbornness, he's a dead man walking. I just can't see him lasting too much longer. Right, that's enough about Ange. There's another manager who's doing fantastically well. It's a manager that we've talked about before. He replaced Gary O'Neill, your man, uh, but he's done an amazing job at a club that I continually say is punching way above its weight. It's a club which I think 9, 10 years ago were in League, uh, I think League Two. Eddie Howe did a fantastic job. It's only got 11,000, 10,000. It's not got many spectators, so that's why I always sort of say it's a fantastic story, and they've got a fantastic coach who's done a fantastic job. And the question I want to pose to you is, will they finish in the Champions League position?
I see how you pointedly remarked about Gary O'Neill there. Nice to see Gary O'Neill's foundations that he'd set at Wolves get them a result this weekend against Leicester. I think that one should be attributed to Gary O'Neill. No, look, Anthony Iraola, he's not a man that can be ignored any longer. This is a great season that Bournemouth are having. They've beaten Man City, they've beaten Arsenal, they've beaten Manchester United now at Old Trafford, and deservedly won all of those games as well. It's not we're not talking like some sort of smash and grab. This is a coach who you spoke very highly of. Leeds obviously were very much in for him, so you've missed out on a great coach,
Oh yeah,
no doubt about it. I think him and Arteta hail from the same part of Spain, so they're really good friends. But no, look, he's a top coach. This will not be his last stop in terms of managing at the highest level in the big leagues. No doubt about it. No doubt some of the big clubs will be already having their eye on him, especially in Europe as well. Look, incredible performance. Last year, obviously, I think guided them to, I think, 48 points or what have you. They already got 28 points this year. You asked me the question, can they get Champions League spots? Now, if you look at it, I mean, look, Man City had another tough away defeat against Villa. Maybe we can touch on that briefly later on, but it's open there, isn't it, Ayub? I mean, you think about now with Saka's injury, will Arsenal drop in terms of some positions? You'd expect them to drop some points. He's that integral. Nottingham Forest, another team that's having a great season. So Bournemouth are 3 points adrift from them. I think fifth spot could also get Champions League. I think this year, depending on how the teams do in Champions League this year or how the English teams do. But I mean, to have Bournemouth fifth, in terms of you mentioned the attendance that they get at their home stadium and the story, which Eddie Howe talks about in detail in his podcast with Simon Jordan. It's a really good story just to listen to, in a sense, where literally Bournemouth started from. It's a real amazing story. But they are there on merit, Ayub. They are
yeah.
absolutely there on merit. The amount of games or points that they've recovered late on suggests a group that's together behind their coach. A cohesive unit. Evan Nilsson doing a great job up front in terms of holding things together, but he's getting such a tune out of some of these young players in Cliver and Otara and Semenyo and all the others, even Tavernier. So look, I think he's done an incredible job. Do I think they can get Champions League? There's a little bit of a, I would say, there's quite a number of teams there stuck in the middle, let's say, in terms of Villa, City, Newcastle, even Fulham, Brighton. So I'm not quite ready to commit in terms of whether they can qualify for the Champions League. What I would say though is, out of those teams, they've got a good a chance as any in terms of the form that they've got in terms of, I guess, the number of games that they'll have to play. Some of these other teams have European commitments as well, Man City, Aston Villa, just to name a few. So this could be the year where a surprise outfit like a Forest, like a Bournemouth, perhaps maybe even a Fulham, although that looks maybe a step too far for them. They could do it. But this coach, incredible coach, really do believe he's destined for even bigger things. Bournemouth
Mm.
fans won't want to hear that. But this is quite incredible to go to Old Trafford and win. I guess in the end, comfortably, United had their moments, but to win comfortably, we'll probably touch on the United side of the ledger briefly, you, but I'll let you confirm whether they're back or not. But
I knew that was coming.
but no, incredible result. I'm still not ready to commit whether they can get Champions League spots. I mean, that's still a way away yet. But the football that they're putting on show, um, the wins, and like I said, those last minute draws and wins that they're pulling out. You'll remember, I think it was against Everton as well earlier this season where they pulled off a huge win. This
Yeah.
is this is a team that's together, that's got a great spirit, and I really do like what I see when I watch them. They're a really good watch as well. So, uh, hats off to the Bournemouth management, hats off to the Bournemouth coach, and that squad's going places. And can you imagine if Bournemouth, out of all teams, I mean, Forest at least have in previous decades in the Brian Clough days some European pedigree, so that would be quite a romantic story, no doubt. But for Bournemouth to get into the Champions League would be the miracle of all miracles. But I'm not quite there yet.
Uh, it's not beyond the realms of possibility because I think it's probably one of the best Premier Leagues that we've had in terms of depth and quality. Because I think usually we've always had that sort of top four, top five, and then there's the rest, or at least there's another group. But we've got a number of sides that we just never imagined would be competing. And I think at the moment, Bournemouth would give anybody a game. Forest as well would give anybody a game. Fulham are all sort of again punching above their weight. Brighton are always there or thereabouts these in recent years. So it's a very, very competitive Premier League. I think Bournemouth, you're right. It's always an indicator. If you've got teams that are scoring last minute equaliser or late equaliser, late winners, it shows a certain spirit, which is really what you need if you're going to succeed in any type of sport, especially in the Premier League. And they've done a fantastic job. I put it down to Iriola. I think he's a fantastic coach. He came with a great reputation. What he's done, I think the acquisition has been really, really good. They've not bought world stars, but they've got very good players, and he's got a really good system. And I actually genuinely think that they'll be there or thereabouts. They're not. This is not a flash in the pan. This is not just something where they'll sort of fade away. I seriously think that they'll be there or thereabouts. And if they do finish top four, I think they've got a great opportunity because City of completely falling apart for City. You've got Arsenal. You're right. They rely on certain individuals. If those certain individuals are not playing out for a length of time, it impacts them greatly. So Arsenal perhaps will. I won't say they'll struggle, but they're certainly not going to win as many games as they would do with Saka in. So I think they've got a great chance, and it won't be a surprise. I won't be surprised if they do finish top four. Right. Okay. Uh, we'll talk about United.
Are they back,
I
Ayub? Are they
yeah,
back?
it was a huge surprise and a shock. Uh, I'm a slightly at a loss for words. I think they played okay in patches, but that's not really what you want. And to get beat by a decent side, but still, it's at Old Trafford, and I think he'll be bitterly disappointed. And I think he'll probably realise there's a lot of work to do. So in one sense, maybe it's something where I don't think he was ever going to be complacent. I think the result against Spurs, even though they got beat, was quite optimistic in a sense that they played quite well. But I think this will really tell him that there's a lot of work. This is not. Uh, this is there's a lot of surgery to be done. So maybe this is perhaps, in one sense, quite good for him, but very, very disappointed. And it's difficult to know exactly what to do and where to start for Amram. I've got to be honest. I mean, if I was him, I'd be thinking, well, what do I do? It just is. There's a lot of changes that need to be made, but where does he start? Because at the moment, I've got to be honest. After that performance, I'd get rid of the lot of them.
He might be ringing Sporting Lisbon just to see if he can have his old job back. Look, I mean, yeah, I mean, just very quickly, Ayub, on the United side of the ledger, since the start of last season, Ayub, that's 55 Premier League games. Their goal difference during that time is -2. -1 last year, all of last year, and they're currently at -1 this year. So -2. 55 games is a large enough sample size that you are what the table says you are, and right now they are a middling team, and that's putting it, and that's a compliment right now because they're 13th with 22 points. Now they're 9 points adrift of Forest. Forest don't have a vastly superior goal difference, so I guess that's um, uh, one boost, I guess, but they are not anywhere near the top four spots. Not that that should be the height of their ambition anyway. Look, they're an average team, are you? Uh, you look at what Mazraoui done for the second goal for the penalty. I mean, it's just the mind boggles. I'm trying to think which one was worse, the Bissouma one against Chelsea or this one. It's neither's good to be fair
Yeah.
from the player's perspective, but they were both as daft as one another. I mean, it's stupid. This player's not even going anywhere, Cliver. So again, mental errors, mental errors. I just again, they're an average team. They're not a great watch. They've got this issue off the field with regards to Rashford, who'll be leaving clearly in January because he was left out of the squad again. It seems like one of those situations where neither party's relenting and both parties probably just want an amicable divorce. Good luck trying to get those wages off your books in the immediate short term. But look, just very quickly, yeah, I just don't think they're a very good team. I think they'll finish probably middling this year, and I've written off next year as well. There's just too much wrong right now, way too much wrong. Not enough talent, not enough.
Mm.
I guess potential. Some may point to things like if they can get Euro fit for the year. But look, he's still a young player. That's too much to put on his back to suggest that he's going to get United back into the big time. Do I think he's a good player? Yes, but uh, even Saliba, when he came through, and I'm making a comparison because some have compared him, but even he spent a couple of years on loan. So I'm not sure that you're going to need many more kind of top quality players to drag you out of this. I don't think next year they can make that leap, that jump. I mean, at the end of this season, again, they'll probably finish mid-table last year, eight. I just think it's a long, long road back. He speaks well in press conferences. I like that. I think he's doing the right things. It's just going to be a long road back. I think there's going to be many, many, many more difficult moments ahead. No doubt a few thrashings along the way as well, especially from some of the big boys who'll take this team apart. Again, right now he's just trying to work out the good characters, maybe some who can be there for the next 2, maybe 3 years, and there won't be many, believe you me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But he's probably trying to work that out in terms of the good characters that he can perhaps hold on to. But this team will be completely revamped in the next 18 to 24 months. And more power to him if he knows what team he needs and what he needs to get out there to put a good product onto the pitch. Um, Again, he deserves that time. I'll just finish off on this. One of my friends not so long ago just pitched the idea, and it's just a very simple comment, but it just did actually throw me off a little bit. He said, "What if this is Manchester United's level now? What if this is them? We keep talking about as though they are going to get back into the big time. I looked at a huge club, the biggest in this country, them alongside Liverpool, at least historically. But it just made me think that as though we have seen this sometimes before, this idea that, okay, clubs will always bounce back because it's Manchester United. And look, I do think there's more chance than not because they've got money. And if you've got money, you can throw enough at it. It'll come through. Chelsea have had some rough seasons recently. Look where they are. But I just wonder with United, there's just a lot wrong right now. Not enough good strategy, not enough good young players, not enough potential, not enough output. Yes, they've got a manager now, but off the field issues. One of your top earners about to leave. Too much noise from the ownership group. You just wonder whether could this be their level for the next 2 or 3 years. And if that's the case, that would be quite shocking in a lot of ways. That mid-table is perhaps where this club lies at the moment. But that's enough on Man United. Ayub, just very quickly, wanted to get your thoughts on What the heck is happening at Man City?
Mm.
Because I can't remember the last time we did a podcast when Man City won. I think they won obviously at Forest at home in one of those games in that run, Ayub. But this is shocking, isn't it? Ayub, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I watched. They could have gone a goal down 30 seconds into the game. It was just absolutely awful. I mean, it's that phrase that is often used, lost the dressing room. I don't know whether he has or not, because it does not seem like the players I mean, they seem to be giving 70% at the moment, which is just not good enough, especially if if you're not firing on all cylinders. Uh, it you cannot in the Premier League. You've got to be playing at 100%. I talked about it just before about it being a much more competitive league than it's ever been. You've got lots and lots of good sides with good players, teams that not normally would be challenging, but they are now. So therefore, you cannot afford to be sort of working at anything less than 100%. That was just awful. What I witnessed there was absolutely horrific. I mean, as I said, it within 30 seconds there could have been a goal down. Sloppiness, lack of concentration. In the first 10 minutes, there could have been three or four down. Uh, and in the end, they were lucky, I think, at the result. It was 2-1. There could have been a lot more. I just, I mean, it's something I keep. It's like a broken record now. I'm going to say the same thing that I've said many, many times. I think Guardiola is really, really struggling. He has no idea how to cope with players that are not playing at the top of the game and are not good enough right at this moment in time. He seems utterly bereft of any ideas. He seems clueless. He really does seem like a rabbit caught in the headlights. And I've said it many times, this is a coach that can only work with great players. You take the greatness away or you take the form away. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Careful now, Ayub. Careful. Steady. I can see you getting carried away with the festive season. You can see you've got. I can see you've got work behind you now. I'm just looking forward to a few days off. You're shooting from the hip, clearly. Something you said though, I think is interesting. Did make me think. You said that with the form not quite where it needs to be, he doesn't know what he's doing, or he doesn't know the answers. And to be fair, he admitted as much afterwards. So those are his words, not yours, about not having the answers. There is a question mark, and I guess you've because of Guardiola's resume and his credentials, you've got to be careful about how you position this statement or question. But the question is he's amazing in terms of his tactical acumen, in terms of his understanding of how to go about putting a certain. Let me rephrase it. He's aware of how to go about putting a team performance together that's going to put the opponent under most pressure. He's done this time and time again, where you can't get the ball off them. They're consistently creating opportunities, getting to the byline, cutbacks, uh, putting dominant performances week in, week out, and I mean week in, week out. What happens when suddenly those players either age together or get to the end of that cycle together? Remember, this is the longest time he's been at any club. So he's had to reinvent the team at least once. So I would argue even twice. But the fact that he's been there longest, the fact that he's allowed a couple of sales to happen, which he ordinarily wouldn't have sanctioned, let's say, for example, Alvarez being a case in point, Palmer being a case in point. I mean, that would be your perfect transition, wouldn't it? We've got this elite level talent. Let's give him a few more games. Let's blood him in. He did it with Foden, so he
Yeah,
can't be said that he doesn't recognize it. But for whatever reason, whether it's through sympathy or whether it's through, I wouldn't say apathy, but whether it's thought he thought, we've got a good enough team, fine. If the young fella wants to leave, let him leave. But clearly, if he knew what Palmer was going to become, he wouldn't have let him
mm,
leave. If you ask him
yeah,
right now, he'd say no, that was a
yeah.
mistake. If you put a lie detector test on him, so the to your question about when things are not going right and they're all aging together and the form's an issue and athleticism's an issue and all the rest of it, does he know or does he know what to say and how to go about creating a system? Now that could be similar to what we spoke about, Ange. That could be, hey, we're going to go back to basics. Two banks of four. Forget the football. We need to make ourselves hard to beat because right now we're not hard to beat. Teams are creating
Mm,
opportunities at will. You mentioned that you're 20 seconds ago. If Durant takes one more touch, he's probably got a better chance of scoring. But multiple opportunities. I mean, one great pass by Tielemans, but you've got a 2-on-1 against
mm,
the keeper. Things like this. I mean, these are all poor decisions from the Manchester City side of the ledger. So I wonder whether or not he has got some ideas to say, look, we're very easy to score against. We're very easy to create against. Right from now on, we're going to play in a certain way. I mean, try that. If you remember against Liverpool, you put Rico Lewis on the right hand side to try and give some protection on that side. He played Nunes on the left to give some protection. He went to a more kind of, let's say, a conservative or pragmatic way of playing. Maybe he's just throwing enough, as they say, throw enough mud, see what sticks. But clearly, not much is sticking right now. For me, the fundamental tangible issue that you can see right now, Yub, is they're lacking pace, they're lacking power, and they're lacking athleticism. I mean, in the middle of the park, that's pretty obvious. If you go in with a midfield of Gundogan, Lewis, and Kovacic, that's not scaring anybody. I'm sorry. You've got to have better reserves to Rodri than those. Gundogan, amazing player, great player, but his time's past him in terms of football at the highest level. And again, I'm just going to make one final point at you. Kevin De Bruyne, I kept mentioning early on, and yeah, he had one or two good performances. My only contention was he's not physically fit enough. And is he doing enough to make sure he's physically fit enough to get through some of these games? Man City had a week off, yet he couldn't make the team and he couldn't make it off the bench. You tell me if there's something not quite right with that picture. I don't think he's as physically as fit as he needs to be. Perhaps at this age and stage of his career, that's a bit of an indictment on the player, perhaps an indictment on Man City overall. But clearly, there's something off. There's no reason why he can't be fit. And you might say he's nursing an injury, but fine. Why is he on the bench then?
Yeah, yeah,
I don't get it. So, if you've got a player who's the preeminent star of this era, especially when it comes to midfielders, so Pantheon, great. You can't have him on the bench whilst Man City are going up in flames, and yet he doesn't make it off the bench to see if he can save the day. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, unless he's not physically fit enough, which I think is the case. So, look, sad from Man City in terms of where this season is headed. They've got a huge test and huge rush. I think maybe the Arsenal Saka news might give them some boost in terms of their chase for top four. But they don't look like a team. I mean, they don't look like they look objectively a poor team. Are you? Just
mm,
objectively speaking,
yeah.
an average team, very tidy, but no real threat. Big man starved of service, and one pass and you can cut right through them like a knife through butter. So difficult times. I don't think there's any considerations for firing the manager. You don't be careful now. But I do think that this could be a very long and testing season. I don't think they'll be challenging for the Premier League title this year, and the show will not start as favourites for the Premier League title next year, irrespective of who they buy.
You're right. He's not going to get sacked. There's no way. He's got too much credit in the bank. But what will happen, or what should happen, is that his legacy will probably be tainted.
Calm down,
Because,
Ayub.
oh no, no, it will. No, no. I think because there's lots of people. I mean, how often have people criticized Guardiola? Very rarely, because he's always been successful. This is the longest period where he's not. I mean, he's had what is it, one win in the 12 games, and it's not just the fact he's not had wins or good results, but it's the performance. So there are people who are always defending him or always eulogizing by him, finding it difficult now to defend him. So it's going to carry on because you're right about KDB. I don't know what the issue is, but he's obviously not getting any game time. Haaland is a shell of the player. Now he thrives on service, but there's nobody in that side who is thinking, right, okay, let me take the bull by the horns. I'm going to now make things happen. It just almost seems that everybody is sort of disappearing. They don't want to take responsibility. Certainly, it's not coming from the coach. So I would find it hard. Even the vehement Guardiola supporters, I'd like them to tell me and convince me that this is the greatest coach that's ever lived.
Yeah, look, I can see how you're going about this, are you? But I don't think that's fair. I think, look, he's going through a really poor run, and he's really not sure what the answers are. And it could just be a season he's going to have to write off. Clearly, it seems as though, I mean, they're not going to challenge for the Premier League title. I think they will get some wins, by the way, in the next couple of games, just because of the nature of the opposition. At least that's my view. But I think Champions League looks far. I mean, they don't look like a team. Again, a good Champions League team where the level's a bit above what the Premier League is, especially when you go deeper into the knockouts. Teams should find this Man City team much easier to play against in terms of being able to score against them. Again, they've got players. It's coincided all together, hasn't it? You where you're missing the best player in the world, and then you've got an average age of an 11 that's perhaps not ideal for this version of the Premier League right now. And you've got players lacking form. There's fitness issues, there's injury issues. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, plus the cycle of a team ultimately coming to the end of their run together. I just wonder also whether the coach is feeling a little bit of that kind of fatigue of just constantly being there at the very last knockings of big Premier League games and Champions League games. So look, I'm with you. He doesn't have the answers right now. That's evident because I don't see any upturn in performances,
Hmm.
and there's no reason why he can't. But there's also some players there where I think he's going to have to make some tough decisions. Are you? I'm talking about your Jack Grealishes. Again, next year I fully expect Bernardo Silva and De Bruyne to move on. So he's gonna really have to think about his reinforcements. You can reinforce them with better players, at least at this stage of their careers. But they'll also need a bit of time. You're talking about this City that were imperious, dominant. You go to Etihad and you're like, if we get a draw, it'll be the miracle of all miracles. Now teams are rocking up thinking, least we expect is a point. I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah.
that is some turn up. So look, let's see how it goes. I'm going to offer you a quick question. Where do you think they finish this season?
I think it will be about 6 or 7. Seriously, they won't finish top 4. I've got a feeling they'll buy in January because they have to, and I think that's Guardiola. That's the only way Guardiola knows. He's certainly not skilled enough to navigate this very. No, he isn't. He's great if he has great players, but at the moment he doesn't have a clue of what he's doing. Yeah, I mean, his default setting is buy players, buy some quality. Uh, but he is certainly at the moment. I mean, I'd be intrigued to find out what he's saying to these players at the moment because the players are absolutely shot. Confidence is low. Morale may not be high. I don't know what he's saying to him because he's if a coach comes out and says, right, I don't know the answers, then that worries me because you're paid very well to have the answers.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I
I don't know
agree.
what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I'm just thinking how that would work in your line of work as well. Yeah, when
I've
when they
been there, and it
it's
doesn't work well.
yeah, it's not gone down too well, has it? Let's be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, listen, I agree with you. All jokes aside, the manager, I mean, I think he's being honest. That's the other thing. I mean, perhaps you might argue too honest.
yeah.
But you're right. You're paid to have the solutions to come up with the answers. I think he's got enough goodwill where Man City probably can write off this season. I mean, it doesn't help that they may, and I say may, not have Champions League income next year. Something that's unfathomable to think about. I still think because the middle area of the or the table, just from that kind of third down, there is a little bit of a quagmire, a little bit of a. I think they can pick up enough points. They'll have obviously a few head-to-heads against some of these teams. You can't think it can get any worse. I mean, perhaps it can. I keep saying this, but you'd think that there will be some upturn at some point where they recover. If you remember, Liverpool had a bit of a lost season not so long ago, and they just about recovered. Alisson's goal aside to get, I think, Champions League football at the very end. You wonder whether or not it's going to be that type of season for Man City and then go again next year. But again, they're not going to win the Premier League title this year. They will not start as favourites for the Premier League title next year. I think the team that Man City take to the field with next year will be, I wouldn't say wholly different, but I think you will have 2 to 3 key players, let's say, that have been jettisoned, as they say, and a few new incomings just to freshen this team up. You can tell clearly that this is a team bereft of some key qualities and attributes that you need to compete in the Premier League right now. So I think Guardiola is identifying that quite clearly. He's having to painfully sit through it week in, week out right now. I think a manager of his ilk will address that in the summer.
Yep. We're seeing the meltdowns every single week with Pep Guardiola. Right, and on that depressing note, if you're a City fan, we'll call it a day. It's going to be a packed program over the next few days, so we'll shoot on Friday. There's lots of games on Thursday, so we'll obviously have plenty to talk about. So until then, stay safe. Enjoy the break because I presume everybody's on holiday. So enjoy yourselves, stay safe, and we'll see you soon. See you later.